bringing in my panel, Sky News contributor Karalee Katsambanis, and the host of the Power Hour on Sky News Digital, Gabrielle Power. Thank you. Let's start with, I think the best analysis I've seen today is Senator Patterson, and again, the iron law of arithmetic here, Karalee. He discussed exactly where the Liberal Party vote, according to published polls, has deteriorated since its historic low. We thought it was a low ebb back then, much lower now, in May last year. I played his grab of those numbers a bit earlier, but he also made, I thought, this very strong point on the question of gender. Have a listen.
Senator, if Susan Ley is taken out today, the burden that you will carry is that you will have brought down the Liberal Party's first federal leader. Does that weigh heavily on you? Sorry, female leader. Does that weigh heavily on you?
Look, some people have been making this argument over the last couple of days. My observation would be that that argument was not successful for Julia Gillard in the Labor Party. I don't believe it will be successful for Susan Ley in the Liberal Party. Political leaders are judged on their performance, not on their gender.
I'll make the point to people at home. That was a journalist, former ABC journalist, now he's on commercial TV, Andrew Probyn, asking that question about gender. Karalee, I'll get your broader view on things, but I don't remember Andrew Probyn ever asking that question of people who were moving against Julia Gillard removing the first female Prime Minister. But there we are. Once on the ABC, probably always of their sentiment. But in terms of the analysis put out there by James Patterson, hard to disagree with any of it, is there?
No, and look, he's spot on. I mean, the thing, Susan Ley, she just failed to outline to the Australian people what she believed in and what she was going to do to make their lives better. To go into politics in the first place, you need a spark. You need something that will spur you on to want to go in to improve people's lives. We saw she's had 25 years in Parliament. I outlined this a few weeks ago. I still don't know what she stands for. I know the soft, fluffy stuff that she's a grandma and she knows how to fly and she's got 2 S's in her name and into numerology. I don't know what she stands for, and we saw that within the first couple of days she blew up the coalition. We also saw she removed 3 very good people, I won't say women, but they are, Sarah Henderson, Jacinta Price, Jane Hume. They were doing the work in their portfolios, shadow portfolios. She removed them, completely blindsided them. We then saw Andrew Hastie, one of the most passionate performers and well-credentialed performers in shadow cabinet. He went to the backbench. The thing is, to be an effective leader, you've actually got to appreciate the people in your team around you, and they're the ones that lift you up and make you actually palatable to the Australian people. All we've seen is disaster after 9 months. She's had long enough. The coalition was blown up for a second time, and it's not good. And it actually shows Susan Ley is treating the Liberal Party like a private company. She's trying to micromanage everything. I said 3 weeks ago she should have had the decency to write out a resignation letter and step down. And every week that goes by, every day, more and more votes are going over to One Nation. It is always about the policy and the articulation of the policy. And I hope that should Angus Taylor win tomorrow, he takes note, reads the good and the bad, but actually hits that ground running with some great policies and gets a really effective front bench.
Gab, on that front bench point, you will have heard my comments, because it's one thing to change the leader. I think you've got to spill that entire front bench. You've got to start again. He's got to make sure it's not factional mates that get a job. He doesn't just turn over the names that we all expect to see, even if they haven't performed. I have been shocked all week, actually, by the number of people I've seen pop up in Sky, all these shadow ministers that say, I had a policy, it was just ready to go, or one was going to come out next week, or I've been doing this. Well, I don't believe one word of that. There's been nothing come out of anyone's offices, least of all the leader's office, for 9 months. So they are being punished, not just because they've got a bad leader who hasn't retailed and resonated with people. They're being punished because they've got a whole lot of people on the front bench who are absolutely lazy and don't deserve the gig. And I'd basically send half of them to the back bench and promote those that are hungry and getting out there and making a name for themselves. So it's not just the leader that's got to change, Gab. Everything else has got to change as well.
You're absolutely right, Peter. I mean, this has just been so painful to watch. Finally, the spill is going to be happening tomorrow, and that could not come soon enough if this party wants a future, of course. It looks like Angus Taylor will almost certainly win tomorrow with all those resignations. But as you say, I mean, it's going to take a lot more than just a new leader to turn this around. We need the right people in front to fight for policies. And the policies, I mean, that is the most important point. This party has failed to deliver any policies. So really looking ahead, this is where this party really has to get its act together, and there should be no confusion about what the Australian people want. I mean, look at the rise in One Nation. Why are people going there? Because Pauline Hanson has been a fighter to cut immigration numbers. And, you know, the polling shows that too. Australians have been crying out for that. That plays into the housing crisis, our safety, the cost of living, of course. And if you look around the world, look at Japan's election. And of course, Japan's Prime Minister took conservative policies to that election and won in a landslide. Look at the rise in support for Reform UK. So look, tomorrow might be the first step, I would say, and then we really need to see some strong policies and the people that are going to fight for those policies to be delivered, because the Australian people deserve so much better than what we've been getting, Peter.
I'll jump into the CFMEU story in a moment with a former head of the watchdog, but in terms of the politics, in terms of the culpability of the Premier in Victoria, given her previous role running the big build, I mean, I think you'd have to go back a very long time to find a bigger allegation of $15 billion of public money funneled into the hands of crooks and organised crime. I think this is about as big as it gets, and I am just surprised that Victorians, Karalee, are not screaming from the rooftops here.
Look, I think they are, but the problem is Jacinta Allen, she's not even accepting responsibility. She was the minister in charge under Victorian Premier Dan Andrews. If, as she says, she knew nothing about it, then it's a clear dereliction of duty. However, if she did indeed know and turned a blind eye to it, then she's actually complicit in $15 billion worth of taxpayer funds. And just to break that down for everyone around Australia, that is $5,000 per every household in Victoria. So it's like someone knocking on the door and asking for $5,000, and it's actually handed over going into the pockets of bikies and criminals. The other thing is the very fact that she is not even going to investigate and ask for the alleged misuse of funds to be paid back is just incredible. But what was even more disappointing today was she chose a very soft setting for the press conference at a hospital with an announcement for sick children. And she was very rattled when she was being asked questions, very bristling as well. Victorians have the right to know where this money has actually gone, because it is just shocking. She doesn't have the decency to apologise. She should actually have the decency to resign. She's categorically said that she won't, and I will hope that the Liberal opposition will actually take the fight up to her. But I hope better than that. November is the state election. Victorians have a choice to make. The choice should be pretty clear. It is $15 billion worth of taxpayers' money, and this should actually be investigated by the National Anti-Corruption Commission.
Well, you've got to ask what's happening in Victoria, because they have their own corruption entity. I will say too, if you haven't got an ambulance that turns up to your house, if you're fighting fires without the equipment and the trucks you deserve, if you're hitting potholes, particularly I was out on one on the Western Highway on the road to Ballarat, if you're hitting potholes and you're blowing out your tyres, this is where the money is going.